Oh, you little sod. Hello, and welcome to episode 5 of the UK Airgun Basics series. And yes, this is the episode where we actually move outside and start shooting outside, because I know that's what a lot of you have been waiting for. And as much fun as it is watching me and Tony talk in a shop, you want to see some shooting outside. And as this series is part of our work teaching people about foraging and wild food and what we do with the business and with the courses, then it's understandable. And if you want to shoot for the table, then you're going to want to go outside at some point to do that. And that's what this episode is all about. It's all about the very basics of moving outside and things like setting up a range in the garden or in a field, how you go about getting permission to shoot on somebody else's land and some of the steps to consider there, and just some ways of approaching people that might give you a better chance of success, and a few things surrounding those kind of subjects. So this is the last episode in the series where we've got content that's balanced between target shooting and hunting. Everything after this is geared more towards the hunting side of things. So I'm going to leave you to watch the rest of this episode. I'm going to hope that rabbit appears from the other side of that hedge. Otherwise, I think I'm probably having fish fingers for tea. So, in most cases, you're going to be shooting outside for one of 3 reasons with a low-powered air rifle in the UK. You're going to be shooting at targets, you're going to be zeroing, or you're going to be hunting or performing some kind of pest control. And the thing is, the basics for all 3 of those are pretty much the same thing. You want to make sure that you're doing things safely, legally, and responsibly. So safely means that the pellets can only possibly end up where you want them to be, or at least a safe zone that you've marked out for that. Legally means that you're doing it within the laws of the UK as they are at the moment. That involves who's shooting, where you're shooting, how you're shooting, what you're shooting, and where those pellets end up. And 3, responsibly. So to achieve those 3 things, you want to have, well, first of all, a range. You want to mark out a distance. For target shooting, it doesn't matter too much. Just the further away you are, then the harder it is going to be to hit those targets, and the more factors come into play, like wind and all sorts of things like that. But if you're hunting or you're zeroing, then the distance does matter, because if you're hunting, you want to make sure that it's an appropriate distance for the quarry that you're hunting or the pest control that you're performing. So for me, that's generally between 25 to 45 meters. That's about the maximum I want to go for a 177 sub 12 foot-pound air rifle. But some people may want to go a little bit further. But if you've only got a 25-meter garden, then practicing for shooting at 40 meters isn't really going to happen, is it? And if you're zeroing, and if you want to zero, say at 30 meters, you need a 30-meter distance in that garden. If you can't achieve that in the space you want to shoot, then you're going to have to go elsewhere to achieve that zero. Next, you want something to shoot at. So you could go for something really simple and just go for a dot on a piece of white cartridge paper, because that's a mark. It doesn't have to have a cross on it, doesn't have to have circles, it just has to be a dot that you're trying to get as close to as possible. That's what we used in the zeroing video with Tony. It was something that was just really simple. You could go for something off the shelf. You can get printed card and paper targets. You can even get sticky back ones that have a fluorescent paint underneath, so that when you hit them, they make a nice fluorescent mark so you can see where you've hit through the scope. You can get all sorts of metal spinning targets. You can get ones in frames that, depending on the quality, might start to fall apart if you keep hitting the same mark again and again. You can even get spinners that screw into fence posts so that you can have fun shooting at a longer distance, or even just check your zero at certain distances. I have one of these set up in one of my shooting permissions, and I have 30 meters marked out, so I know if I'm hitting the zero at 30 meters. And you can start to go down the DIY route. You can start to look at things like metal sheets, and because that is a perfect backstop as well, and it will stop an air pellet. As you can see with this one here, it's been used for everything from rim fires and centre fires, as well as air pellets. Not all of those projectiles were stopped by this plate, as you can see. Some people like you shooting at cardboard boxes, tin cans, whatever it is suitable for what you're doing. If you're zeroing or you're practicing your techniques for hunting and to eventually to hunt live animals, then you want to make sure that the target you're shooting at is the appropriate size. Next is the backstop. So if you either hit or miss your target, that pellet is going to carry on to somewhere else. It's either going to become embedded in what's immediately behind the target, it's going to bounce off it and come back towards you at an angle for a distance, or it's going to carry on straight through the target until it hits another solid object behind. So your backstop needs to take those into account. If you're shooting at very short distances, or you're shooting in areas where a pellet bounce back could become a hazard, then very hard objects aren't great. Some metal plates are really bad for this, particularly flat metal plates. The pellets can bounce back at unexpected angles. So if you're shooting at metal plates, you need to have a very wide, safe area around it. If you're shooting at things like pellet traps that hold paper targets, then these are great and they hold the pellets in, but they are noisy and the construction does vary, and I have actually worn a hole through the back of one of mine. Some people like to shoot at wood backstops of various types. There are pros and cons to all of these. In most cases, anything that's fairly thin will eventually wear through, and you'll start to hit the same mark again and again, and it will drill a hole through. So as you can see here, it's gone through a piece of MDF and a piece of plywood, and it's actually gone through to something on the other side. That wasn't a good choice of backstop. If the wood is too hard, it can just bounce out and go through that again. What I like to do is have sort of a hybrid of these, and it's mostly made of things I had lying around the workshop because, well, I'm cheap. So I have a piece of plywood on a stand, I have a foam block, and then I have a piece of paper on the front of that. So foam blocks absorb some of the noise and some of the bounce back problems. The plywood stop will stop it, but I do have to replace that occasionally. And the paper target, well, it's easy to replace, and I can print off whatever type of target I think is suitable for the shooting that I'm doing. Another thing to consider with your backstop is the noise factor as well as the bounce back, because if anything is too noisy and you can hear not only the sound of the gun being fired but also the pellets hitting that backstop and bouncing or doing whatever they're going to do, then it's potentially going to annoy any neighbours or even family members. So you want to be aware of how noisy that backstop is, and if you can do anything to make it quieter, then it's probably going to improve the relationship you have with the people around you. One technique I know a lot of people use is to take a cardboard box and fill it full of old towels or old blankets or just very heavy duty fabric and make it at least, well, that thick. Then the pellet travelling in will not only be buried within that fabric and not travel through to the other side, it will also do so fairly quietly. Once you've worked out how you want to set up a shooting range and ways you can do that, and you've got a safe system, you may want to move beyond your own property and speak to other landowners about shooting on their land. So this might just be another place to practice, another place to shoot that gives you another challenge, a different location. Or it might be because you want to take your shooting on to either shooting for the table, as I do, and shooting for food, or because you have other interests there. Now, this is going to involve having to go and speak to those landowners and negotiate the rights to shoot on their land. Any kind of relationship I have with a landowner about shooting on their land is normally part of a transactional agreement, a reciprocal agreement. I provide a service to them, whether it's controlling what is seen as pests on their land, say rabbits, grey squirrels, wood pigeons, that kind of thing, and in return I get somewhere to shoot and I get food for my table. When you go to visit these landowners for the first time, particularly if it isn't somebody you have a contact with or have met before, then you want to make sure that you look approachable and friendly and professional. You don't want to arrive head to toe in a ghillie suit with a massive knife strapped to your thigh, talking about how you want to kill every single piece of wildlife near them. Because, well, I can almost guarantee that transaction and that relationship isn't going to develop. If you arrive looking fairly, well, average, wearing something outdoorsy and relevant, not a suit and tie, but something that's fairly plain, something that doesn't create too much of a polarization, too many signals in one direction or the other, and just be honest about what you want to do. You enjoy shooting, you want to shoot for the table, or you want to enjoy shooting as a sport. You maybe are a member of BASC, the British Association of Shooting and Conservation, you have insurance through them, and that you are aware of the hazards and you're aware of how to shoot outdoors safely and legally and responsibly. All of those things are more likely to get you a good result and possibly get you that shooting permission. And you want to maintain those relationships because you are providing a service, but they're also providing something for you. So you want to remain on good terms with them and be friendly with them. And for most of my permissions, I have to speak to the landowner before I come to shoot. I can't just arrive and turn up with my gun and say, well, you've given me permission to shoot, I'm going to shoot now. I phone them the night before or the day before and say, oh, the weather looks good on Friday night. Can we come up for a couple of hours on this day? We'll arrive here and we'll shoot in these fields over here. You have to maintain that relationship as you see fit. Also, with these landowners, you need to make sure that you have written permission. You need to have a land authority form or a shooting permission form of some kind. There are lots of different ones online. There are lots of great examples out there. I'll link to some below in the video. What I tend to do is when I go and get the form signed or go and get it renewed, because I often put an expiry date of maybe 2 or 3 years on there, or the landowner wants to do that. When I go in to renew it, I also take along an ordnance survey map so I can just double check which fields are the ones that belong to them, so I know exactly which fields I can legally be in with that air weapon. I also might take along a gift at Christmas and, well, some homemade slow gin or something like that. It doesn't really cost much to make, and it goes a long way when I'm dealing with my shooting partners and the landowners I work with in making sure that that relationship carries on. A popular place for people to start is farmland or stables. Now, in those cases, it's probably rabbits that they would be interested in you reducing the numbers of. For farmland, it's because rabbits are a conflict in grazing. They do actually graze away quite a lot of the grass that the farmers want for their own livestock or for their own purposes. And for stables, it's because rabbits dig burrows. If those burrows are in the middle of a field or at the edge of a field, a horse may run or walk through that. If it breaks its leg, sadly, it's almost certain that the horse won't be able to be treated and will have to be put down. So most stable owners or people who have horses are particularly aware of the risks of rabbits and rabbit holes. So if they don't have somebody who shoots on their land already, they may be interested in speaking to you about that. So those are two places that you can approach. But as I said earlier, don't be surprised and don't be annoyed and don't suddenly take the hump because somebody says that you can't shoot on their land. So that's about it for episode 5. There's a lot to think about there, isn't there? Because you've got to make sure that you do things, well, safely, first of all, and make sure that you are staying safe yourself and you're not endangering those around you or the general public or anyone else that might be in the area. You want to make sure that you're doing things legally. You don't want to be having visits from your local armed response team from the police. And you want to make sure that you're enjoying what you're doing, because after all, this is a sport, even if some of us do it for a job. With all of that in mind, there aren't too many restrictions to shooting legally with an air rifle in the UK. You've just got to make sure that you're doing it in the right way. But if you are doing it in the right way, you can have a lot of fun with it and it can be a lifelong sport and pastime. So hopefully this video has been useful for that. We've got episode 6 coming up, and as I said at the beginning of the video, every episode after this one is going to be pretty much about hunting. I know we've been a little bit late in getting episode 5 out, and there's 2 reasons for that. One is that we had, well, not just us, but we quite a few channels on YouTube that had anything to do with hunting and shooting, either in the tags or the names of the videos and things like that. There was a bit of trouble at the beginning of 2018 where some videos were taken down or demonetized or flagged, or there were all sorts of things going on. So we were on the very fringes of that. So we held back on publishing any more content just because we didn't want to get further into that and be seen as being a gun channel and then being taken down. And the other thing is, it just takes a hell of a long time to film these videos and particularly to edit them. So we've actually filmed most of the content for the rest of the series. It's already in the cam. It's partly edited, most of the episodes are up and ready to go. We just want to make sure that we are still trickling them out and making sure that we do things properly, because I want these to be educational, I want these videos to be relevant, and I also want them to be, well, hopefully enjoyable to watch. And I know the 2 blokes stood in a shop talking about guns isn't necessarily the most interesting thing, but, well, there's only so much we can do. So thank you for watching. If you already like if you already subscribe to the channel and you're already a fan of the videos and you've made it this far into the series, thank you very much. Episode 6 is coming along soon. Your patience will be rewarded. But for everyone else, if you haven't already, can you like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with anybody you think might be interested in it. If you enjoyed this content or you have any comments, please leave them in the comments stream below. All the links to the businesses, the links to Tony's Camo and to everything else that I've mentioned in this video should be in the notes below this video and on the originaloutdoors.co.uk website. I think that's everything. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again next time.